The stars shimmered outside the wide windows of the UN starship Horizon Dawn. It was humanity's most advanced ship, sent deep into uncharted space for a mission of peace. Today, something historic was happening, a meeting between humans and an alien race known as the Siren. Everyone on board wore their best uniforms. The air smelled faintly of metal and new cloth. Captain Elias Monroe, a tall man with calm eyes and a warm smile, stood at the center of the docking bay. His crew stood in perfect formation behind him, waiting. A soft voice came through the speakers. "The Siren shuttle is approaching, docking in 10 seconds. Everyone grew quiet. The small silver shuttle slowly connected with the ship. With a soft hiss, the door opened, revealing a group of tall, elegant beings. They were the Siren, graceful, pale-skinned, with large violet eyes and fine silver markings across their foreheads. At the front of them was Zalari, the Siren ambassador. Looked young, but in her world, age was not shown on the face. She had trained all her life for this mission. She had memorized every rule of ceremonial first contact, the exact bow, the correct phrase, the perfect silence between each motion. She stepped forward with slow, graceful steps, hands held in. The Siren greeting position, palms up, fingers together. Her face showed no emotion. As was proper, Captain Monroe smiled as she approached. He did not bow. He did not speak the phrase. He did not pause. Instead, he stepped forward and gently hugged her. It was a soft, human gesture. His arms wrapped lightly around her shoulders. He did not squeeze or hold for long. It lasted only 3 seconds, but for Zalari, it was shocking. Her eyes went wide. Her body froze. No one in her life had ever touched her like that, not without permission, not without a long ritual, not ever. She felt something strange. Warmth, safety. It was nothing like the cold respect of Siren customs. Captain Monroe stepped back, smiling. "Kindly, welcome aboard the Horizon Dawn. We're honored to meet you." Zalari blinked. She tried to speak the ceremonial words, but her throat felt dry. Her aides behind her whispered warnings in Siren. She finally spoke, voice soft. I greet you, Captain Monroe," her translator buzzed in her ear. The words came out well. But inside she was confused. What had just happened? Later, Zalari sat alone in her guest quarters. The room was clean, with soft lighting and comfortable furniture.
More human touches?
She turned on her diplomatic tablet and began recording her report. "This is Zalari, reporting to the Siren Council. First contact with humans has occurred. The ship is well maintained. Crew shows discipline. However, there was an unexpected cultural event." She paused. Her fingers hovered over the recording button. Should she say it? She decided to continue. Instead of the expected ceremonial greeting, Captain Monroe performed a physical gesture. "He embraced me, something called a hug in human culture. It was ... unexpected. Not violent, but not formal. I was not prepared." She stopped the recording and leaned back. Her mind raced. Why had the human touched her? Was it a mistake? It meant to insult? No. She had seen his face. It meant no harm. In fact, she had felt ... something else. A deep warmth in his presence. Like being seen not as an ambassador, but as a person. The translator had no word for that feeling. The next day, Zalari walked through the halls of the Horizon Dawn. She kept her distance from the crew. Watched them closely. Humans greeted each other with smiles. They clapped hands. They hugged. Sometimes they laughed loudly. Sometimes they cried. Their emotions were visible, so open, so different. A young human engineer dropped a box, another rushed to help. They exchanged a short hug afterward. Zalari tilted her head. In Siren culture, no one would do such a thing. Help was given only when asked. Touch was given only in ritual. Emotion was shown only in private. Yet these humans showed emotions like it was normal. It made her feel small. Like her training had missed something important. That evening, Captain Monroe invited Zalari to the observation deck. The stars stretched endlessly outside the glass. "I hope I didn't offend you yesterday," he said gently. "We know every species is different, but I figured ... well, sometimes a hug says more than 100 words." Zalari looked at him, her expression unreadable. "You touched me without permission," she said calmly. Monroe nodded. "Yes, that was my mistake." He paused, then added, "But I'm glad I did." "You looked like someone who had never been welcome, not truly." Something inside Zalari shifted. For a moment, the Siren mask slipped, her voice softened. "I have trained all my life for ceremonies, but no training prepared me for that." "Warmth," Monroe smiled. "It's just a hug. We do it when we care, or when we want someone." Zalari stood in front of the mirror in her guest quarters, staring at her reflection. Her long silver hair flowed down her back, her violet eyes calm, her skin glowing softly under the lights. She looked like the perfect Siren ambassador, but something inside her felt different. It had been 2 days since the human Captain Elias Monroe had hugged her. She should have reported the moment as a violation of protocol. She should have returned to her ship and asked to be taken home. But she hadn't. Instead, she stayed. She walked the halls of the Horizon Dawn, quiet and observant. Every day she watched the humans go about their duties. And every day she noticed one thing. They touched each other a lot. It wasn't violent. It wasn't disrespectful. It was comforting. Sometimes it was just a hand on the shoulder. Other times, it was a short hug. Parents with children, friends with friends, even officers and engineers, when one of them looked tired or upset, would give small, supportive gestures. Zalari had been taught that physical contact was only for bonding rituals, healing, or punishment. But here, humans used touch as a way to share feelings. It made her curious, made her uncomfortable. More than anything, it made her feel something she didn't understand. Captain Monroe noticed her watching. One morning, after a short meeting with the officers, he walked beside her as she moved down the hallway. "You're always observing us," he said, with a friendly smile. "Learning our ways?" Zalari nodded. "Your culture is unfamiliar. But I want to understand. Touch seems very important to your kind." He laughed gently. "That's true. We're a bit emotional, some more than others." "Do you always hug new visitors?" she asked. Monroe raised his eyebrows. "No, I don't. But with you, it felt right." Zalari tilted her head. "Why?" He paused before answering. "You looked like someone who needed it, not in a bad way, just like no one had ever said, 'You matter,' without words." Zalari said nothing. Her heart felt heavy, and she did not know why. Later that day, Zalari visited the learning deck, where human crew members trained and studied. A small group of children was present, families of diplomats and scientists who lived aboard the ship. The children were running, laughing, learning about stars and planets. Zalari stood quietly near the wall, watching. One of the younger children, a girl with dark, curly hair, tripped and fell. The girl began to cry. Mother rushed over, knelt beside her, and hugged her tightly. Within seconds, the child calmed down. Zalari blinked. She turned away and walked quickly back to her quarters. Inside, she sat down on the floor and closed her eyes. Her hands trembled slightly. "Why does it affect me so?" she whispered to herself. She opened her eyes and picked up her diplomatic tablet again. "Report to Siren High Council," she said, voice quiet. "Humans express emotions in public. They are unafraid to show sadness, fear, or joy. This is often done through touch. It is seen not as weakness, but as strength." She paused. "I've experienced this myself." The human captain offered a gesture of emotional sharing, a hug. It was not unpleasant. She ended the recording, but she didn't send it. That evening, Captain Monroe invited Zalari to dinner in the main observation lounge. The stars outside the wide windows sparkled like silver dust. The humans had prepared both human and Siren food, showing respect for her culture. They ate quietly for a while. Then Monroe looked up at her. "You don't talk much," he said kindly. "But your eyes say a lot." Zalari glanced at him. "Do you always speak with feelings?" Monroe laughed. "Sometimes too much." "You are open. It is strange. Some would say it's our weakness." Zalari shook her head slowly. "I think it may be your strength." He looked surprised. The stars outside the horizon dawn seemed peaceful, but inside the ship, alarms were ringing. "Emergency distress signal from Moonbase A-17, said Commander Lee from the control deck. "There's been an energy core failure. The reactor is unstable. Hundreds of civilians are at risk." Captain Monroe stood tall. "How long until it explodes?" "Less than 6 hours." He turned to the crew. "Prepare a rescue mission. We're moving in." At the side of the room, Zalari listened quietly. Her Syrian advisors urged caution. "This is not our matter," one of them whispered in there native tongue. "This is a human problem. Let them handle it." But Zalari didn't respond. Her eyes were fixed on the large screen showing the moon base. Fires burned along the edge. Small dots people ran in panic. Her heart tightened. She had never felt this before. It wasn't fear. It was something else. She turned to Monroe. "Let me help." The captain blinked. "You want to come on the rescue mission?"
Yes.
She said, "I have medical training and experience in energy systems. I can assist." His face softened. "We'd be honored." An hour later, the shuttle descended onto the moon's dusty surface. Smoke rose from broken towers. Families huddled in corners. Children cried as workers rushed to fix the reactor. Zalari stepped out, her boots sinking slightly into the moon. Dust. The air was thin. The panic was thick. Her training took over. She moved quickly to the medical tents, helping the injured. Her hands, trained for delicate Syrian surgery, worked with precision. But she noticed something strange. Humans didn't. Just heal wounds. They comforted. They spoke gently. They held hands. One doctor even paused to hug an injured worker before returning to duty. It made Zalari pause. Is it really possible to give strength through touch? Then she heard a sound crying. She turned. A small girl, no older than 5, was sitting alone behind a crate. Her clothes were dusty, and her face was tear-dash streaked. So slowly walked over and knelt down. "Are you hurt?" she asked softly. The girl didn't answer. She just stared at Zalari's glowing silver face, scared and confused. Zalari reached into her pouch and pulled out a small light crystal from her homeworld. She held it out. It shimmered like a star. The girl reached for it slowly. Her little fingers touched Zalari's hand. Then, without warning, the girl threw her arms around Zalari and hugged her tightly. Zalari froze. Her breath caught in her throat. This wasn't like Monroe's hug. This was smaller, softer, but full of raw, wordless emotion. The girl trembled in her arms. "So," single quotes, "Ari," wrapped her arms around the child and returned the hug. Something inside her cracked. A wall she didn't know existed. Warmth spread through her chest. She could feel the girl's heartbeat, and suddenly a strange, powerful emotion filled her, a need to protect. Later, after the reactor was stabilized and the people were safe, the shuttle returned to the horizon dawn. Zalari sat alone in her quarters, silent. Her hands still felt the warmth of the little girl's hug. Her chest was heavy, but not in a painful way. She picked up her diplomatic tablet again. "Report to Saren High Council," she said in a quiet voice. "Today I assisted in a human rescue mission. I encountered a young child who had lost her parents during the panic. She was scared. She did not ask for healing. She did not ask for food. She simply hugged me." Zalari paused. I returned the gesture. And in that moment, something inside me changed. I do not have a word for it. Our language does not hold it. She frowned and looked down at her translator device. There is something the humans feel when they touch, something deep. Connection. Silent promise that says, "You are not alone." She ended the recording and saved it. But again, she did not send it. That evening, Captain Monroe found her standing on the ship's observation deck, looking out at the stars. "I heard what you did," he said gently. "The little girl. You saved her." She hugged me, Zalari said softly. Before I even spoke to her, Monroe nodded. "Kids understand things faster than we do sometimes. There's no word for that feeling in my tongue." She said, "It's like being chosen. Like your presence makes another feel safe." He smiled. "We call that comfort, care, or love. Depends on the moment." She nodded slowly. "On my world," she said, "emotions are not shared easily. We protect our minds."
Ow.
The ship was quiet again. No more alarms, no more smoke. The people rescued from the moon base were resting in the lower quarters. Doctors moved between them, offering medicine, food, and calm voices. Zalari stood in the Horizon Dawn's greenhouse. Plants from Earth grew in wide rose-green leaves, bright flowers, even fruit. She breathed in the fresh, warm air, so different from the metallic scent of her own world. She touched the soft petals of a red flower, so delicate, so alive. Footsteps approached. She didn't need to turn. She already knew it was Captain Monroe. "You like it here?" he asked gently. "It's strange," Zalari replied. "Your world grows so openly. Even your plants show feeling." He chuckled. "You'd be surprised how many people come here just to think." She looked up at him. "I've been thinking." He nodded. "About what?" She hesitated, then said, "Back home, my people will not understand what happened here. They will ask why I allowed a human to hug me, why I stayed after the ritual failed, why I helped in a human rescue." Monroe's smile faded slightly. "Will it be seen as weakness?" "Yes," she said, "but I don't think it is." He leaned against a nearby tree. "Want to tell me what you really feel?" Zalari turned to face him. Her eyes were steady, calm, but inside, her thoughts spun in all directions. "I was raised to be perfect," she said softly, "trained in diplomacy, taught to speak without emotion, to greet without touch, to lead without showing pain." Monroe listened in silence. "But now, after being here, after that child hugged me, after watching your people risk their lives to save strangers, I've started to wonder." He raised his eyebrows. "Wonder what?" "If maybe there's more strength in feeling than in silence." Eyes warmed. "You don't have to become human, Zalari. You just have to be yourself. Whatever that means." She gave a small nod. Then she said, "When you first hugged me, I thought you were foolish." He laughed softly. "That's fair. But now I wonder," she continued, "if that small act changed more than any ceremony ever could." Later that night, Zalari visited the medical bay. The little girl she had rescued was sleeping peacefully, her tiny hand holding the glowing Siren light crystal one. One of the human nurses whispered, "She won't let go of it." Zalari watched her for a long moment. Her heart ached in a new way, not from duty, but from something deeper. A feeling she didn't yet have a word for. She looked up and saw something new in the room's corner. Picture drawn in bright crayon. A child's drawing. It showed a tall silver figure and a small girl holding hands. In the corner was a red heart. It took Zalari several seconds to understand that the drawing was of her and the child. Her breath caught. The heart wasn't just a symbol. It meant something to humans. Love, care, bond. She left the room silently, her steps slow, thoughtful. The next morning, a message arrived from the Siren High Council. "Ambassador Zalari," the voice said through the communicator, "we have reviewed your early reports. The council is confused by your delay in completing the official first contact ceremony." He asked for an immediate explanation. Zalari stood still. Her advisors watched her closely. One of them whispered, "Tell them the humans broke protocol. End this mission before more rules." The council's voice echoed in Zalari's mind long after the message ended. "We request an official explanation. The ceremonial greeting was not followed. Your reports show emotional irregularities. Has the mission been compromised?" She sat still in her quarters, her hands folded in her lap. The soft hum of the ship filled the quiet space around her. Her advisors stood near the door, waiting, but Zalari no longer looked to them for answers. Instead, she closed her eyes and thought of the human child, the little girl who hugged her without fear. She thought of the doctor who comforted the wounded, the crew who supported each other, And Captain Monroe, who had welcomed her not with ritual, but with sincerity. She stood and walked to the center of the room. "I will answer the council myself," she said calmly. Her advisors looked uneasy. "Ambassador, you must speak carefully. They may recall you, I understand." She turned on the communication device. The screen lit up, and the faces of the High Council appeared, wise, expressionless, distant. Zalari bowed slightly. "Honored council members, I have received your message." One counselor leaned forward. "We require a clear explanation, Ambassador. Why did you allow the humans to proceed outside of protocol?" Zalari took a breath. "Because something greater than protocol happened." Murmurs passed between the council members. "I was greeted not by bow or phrase," she continued, "but by something called a hug. At first I believed it was a mistake, but now I understand it was an act of trust. It was the human way of saying, 'You are welcome, you are not alone.'" Another counselor frowned. "You risked your mission for emotion?" Zalare looked at them, her voice steady. "No, I fulfilled the mission by truly understanding them." She paused, then added, "I learned that humans value honesty in action. They connect through touch, through care, through open hearts. They are not weaker for it. In fact, their strength lies in their unity." There was silence on the line. Then a final question came. "Do you wish to continue as our ambassador, Zalari?" She met their eyes through the screen. "But not as I was trained. I wish to serve not only with words and rituals, but with understanding." The council gave no clear answer. The screen went dark. Later that day, Captain Monroe met Zalari in the ship's garden. The plant swayed gently in the recycled air. "Did the council accept your message?" he asked. "I do not know yet," she replied. "But I spoke with honesty. That is what matters." He smiled. "Then you've learned the most human lesson of all." She nodded slowly. "I once believed that strength meant silence. But now I see that strength can also mean sharing." He looked at her for a moment. "So what happens next?" Zalari stepped closer to him. Her hands were at her sides, relaxed. No ceremonial pose, no prepared speech. "Next," she said softly, "we begin again." And this time it was Zalari who hugged first. It was gentle, brief, and the stars shone brighter than ever through the wide windows of the horizon dawn. The ship moved slowly through deep space, calm and peaceful. For the first time in many days, the crew felt relaxed. The mission to the moon base had ended. Lives were saved, and something deeper had changed, not just between two species, but between two hearts. Zalari stood in the observation deck once again where it had all started. The same place where she had once expected a cold, formal greeting, and instead received something far more human, a hug. This time she wasn't alone. Children were playing nearby, some of them rescued from the moon base. One of them, the little girl who had hugged Zalari, ran up to her, holding the glowing Siren crystal like it was the most precious treasure in the universe. "Look," the girl said with a bright smile. "It still glows." Zalari knelt beside her. "That's because you are still holding it. It responds to care and peace." The girl tilted her head. "So, if I get scared, will it stop glowing?" "No," Zalari replied. "It will glow even brighter. Because even in fear, your heart is strong." The child gave her another hug and ran off to play. Zalari smiled, a real, soft smile. She did not hide it. She no longer felt she had to. In the following days, something beautiful began to happen aboard the ship. Zala single quotes Ari. Once distant and silent, began to speak more openly with the crew. She joined in discussions, laughed quietly at jokes, and even helped the cooks in the food deck, preparing a Siren-style dish that many humans found strange, but interesting. She shared stories from her home world of tall crystal mountains and silent lakes that sang at night. In return, Monroe and his crew told her tales of Earths of snowfalls, rainstorms, music, and colors she had never seen. They learned from each other, and more importantly, they began to trust each other. One evening, during a shared cultural event, Captain Monroe stood up with a small device in his hand. "This," he said, "is something new. "A gift we've prepared for Zalari." Everyone turned to look. Zalari stood near the edge of the room, curious. He pressed a button. The screen behind him lit up with images. Photos taken during her time on the ship. Some were small moments, a quiet walk, her helping in the medical bay, her handing out food, or her simply standing by the window, with the stars behind her. The final image was of her hugging the small child, and then words appeared on the screen. "A unity needs no language." The crew clapped gently. Some smiled, others nodded. Zalari was silent, but her eyes shimmered. She stepped forward and bowed her head slightly. Then, raising her voice just enough, she said, "Your kindness has touched more than my mission. It has touched my being." The room grew quiet. She continued, "We Siren do not often share emotions. But I will say this now. Clearly, thank you for showing me your world, for showing me how to feel." That night, as the ship continued its journey through space, Zalari received a new message from the Saren High Council. She opened it alone, seated in her quarters. "Ambassador Zalari, your most recent report has been accepted. While your methods are unconventional, the results speak clearly. Your bond with the human crew has opened a path we did not expect. The Council has agreed. You may continue your role on the Horizon Dawn as a permanent ambassador," she closed. The message with calm hands, but inside her, waves of quiet emotion moved. She did not celebrate. Instead, she walked slowly through the halls of the ship until she reached the quiet greenhouse, where green leaves glowed under artificial light. Captain Monroe was already there, watering one of the plants. "You knew I'd come, Zalari," said. He smiled without looking up. "You always come here when your mind is full." She stepped beside him. "The Council has allowed me to stay." He looked up at her. "I'm glad. The ship wouldn't feel right without you now." There was a pause. Zalari looked at the small fruit tree in front of them. "Captain Dew, you know what my name means in your language?" He shook his head. "No, what does it mean?" She touched a leaf gently. "Zalari means she who listens to silence." Monroe looked thoughtful. "That's beautiful." She smiled faintly. "But now, I think I'm learning to listen to something else." "To what?" She turned to face him. "Two hearts. To the quiet sound of connection, of trust, care." Monroe met her eyes. "You've changed a lot, have grown," she said, "but not away from who I was." "I have grown toward who I can be." He nodded slowly. "I think we all have." And as they stood together, side by side, two worlds no longer felt so far apart. The stars above did not change, but the hearts beneath them did. In a place where silence once ruled, something new had bloomed, not through grand speeches, not through royal rituals, but through the gentle power of a single human hug.